Hey everybody, it's Bruno. Here's my new episode of MB. Be my next guest on MB by clicking on the link below and we'll contact you. So listen, enjoy the episode.
That's right. What's up, you sucker? That's right. What's up, you sucker? What you looking at?
All right, hey everybody, it's Bruno on MB, where not everything has to be serious. Okay, I am like blown away with my next guest over here. I can't even believe she's on the same screen as I am. So I have Melissa Agnes straight from the Big Apple, New York City. Melissa, tell us who you are, what you're doing, and why I'm just blown away.
Well, I can't speak for you for being blown away, and thank you for that. Hello, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Melissa Agnes. I am a lot of things, but I suppose in the context of this, I'm a Montrealer who lives in New York, who has recently, crisis management is my thing. Crisis readiness is my thing. I help organizations, both government and corporate, become what I call crisis ready. So embedded crisis ready culture. I've been doing that around the world for a decade now. And in 2020, I launched the next evolution of my career, which is the Crisis Ready Institute, which is a whole new game. And it's exciting, it's scary, it's growing, it keeps me on my toes. And yeah.
Well, you know what? I know that you're going to give me a hard time about this because I know that you didn't like to do that intro, but I knew I was going to mess it up a little bit because, first of all, you're too humble. Number one, you are the foremost you are the expert in crisis management. Until I heard you speak, and you were nice enough to answer my call the first time a year and a half ago. I know that there are very few people, and you don't have to comment on this. Very few people come close to what you bring to the table, and
Thank you.
right off the bat, what is the Crisis Ready Institute?
Thank you for saying that. The Crisis Ready Institute is, so my book, so I'm an author, Crisis Ready, Building an Invincible Brand in an Uncertain World is my book. It launched in March 2018. And when it launched, I had been, a consultant in crisis readiness for close to a decade at that point. And I invented my career path a decade ago. So I didn't go to school for this, and I didn't start in an agency where they taught me their ropes. So I just do what I do through my lens and the way that I feel is the best way to do it. And that has led to me realizing the differentiator that I am in the marketplace in this industry. And my book really brought that to light because I give everything in my book, right? I reveal everything. I give everything. It is there as a resource to help you become crisis ready. And I give as much as I possibly can within those pages. And I make it fun, and there's games and just all kinds of things. And so many professionals came to me afterwards that had never worked with me before, but had read the book and said, had we known about you, had we, why aren't other consultants and firms doing it the way that you're doing? Because we hired people to become crisis prepared, which is not the same as crisis ready, which is why I coined the term crisis ready. And we're bleeding money or we're bleeding reputation as a result of their best practice not being applicable to our industry, and us only realizing that when we had an incident. And so that really, really frustrated me because that's a disservice. Crisis in its biggest form, and I think everybody in the world in 2020 understands this at this point in time, crisis in its biggest forms affects lives and livelihood. It affects the economy, and it affects the environment, or one to all of three of those things. So it's a big deal, right? This is a show that I don't take life very seriously, but I take my work very seriously and the impact of my work very seriously. And so that really frustrated me. Thank you. That really frustrated me. So I went on a two-year journey of trying to figure out, why am I a differentiator? What is it about me that's different? And realizing that, just super high level, I approach my work not as status quo of a crisis management plan that is delivered, that sits on a shelf, and that does absolutely nothing to truly serve the people that it's designed to serve and their constituents, their communities, their stakeholders in the event of a crisis. And we know this just through COVID, right? When COVID struck, anybody with a crisis management plan in that form, it did not serve them. They were still in crisis. They were not resilient. They did not have the skill set that they required. And that's what I realized that through my work, I've never taken that approach. I've seen crisis readiness as a learnable skill set that I can transfer to my clients and then help them embed into the culture of their organization, so that no matter the way that we define successful crisis readiness is that you and your entire team can come out of any challenge, be it an issue or a crisis, with increased trust and credibility with those who matter most to your business, which means essentially you are doing right by the people you serve and you are empowered to do so through challenge when you're put to the test. And so that's kind of a long-winded but yet short version of saying that led me to, okay, so if I believe that if every organization, every professional were crisis ready to my level of crisis readiness in the world, then I believe that we would have a kinder, safer, more balanced world. And so then my next question became, how do I achieve that? How do I achieve that or strive to achieve that without actually owning an agency? Because that's not the business model that I want for several reasons. And the Crisis Ready Institute is the answer to how do I achieve that. So we're a startup. It's the next evolution. It's so much bigger than me. It's the next evolution of my career. And we are catering to professionals, to consultants, and to students because they're the leaders of our tomorrow. And we are helping to help empower them to embed a crisis-ready culture, and in doing so, building the skill sets and the capacities as professionals, as leaders, to achieve that level of crisis-ready success that I just defined. So coming out of any challenge with increased trust and credibility in your brand and in your leadership. So super high level, but also maybe a little bit long-winded. That is what the Crisis Ready Institute is.
Well, you know what? You say it's long-winded because I think that you said something. I gave you a little thumbs up, and it confuses a lot of people, I think. And I mean, you can obviously have your own comment, but you said something right off the bat saying, I don't take myself very seriously, but I take what I do very seriously. That is such a cool statement because I've used that for years, and that in different contexts really confuses people when you bring the heat. And they're kind of like, oh my God, I didn't realize you were that intense about it. Well, I just finished telling you, I don't take myself seriously, but what I do is really serious. Now, one thing I want to talk to you about is ever since I've met you and followed your material, so I'm a huge fan, you know that, right? Not a creepy fan. I'm a huge fan.
No, you're a wonderful supporter, and I appreciate you so much.
Well, I'm telling you is because everybody's used risk management and this and that and the other thing, and crisis management loosely. And it reminds me of probably the funniest line, I think, in Seinfeld, just filmed right down the street from where you live, where George walks in and drops a book down in Jerry's coffee table. And Jerry says, what's that? And he goes, it's a book on risk management. And he goes, why? He goes, because his boss, George Steinbrenner from the New York Yankees, said, Steinbrenner wants us to do a presentation on our area of expertise. And Jerry says, risk management? And George goes, I guess it's on my resume, right? And so, well, I love that because obviously in my search background, things are on the resume and then you dig and you're like this. I really believe after talking to you on several occasions and watching you describe crisis management and crisis situations, crisis, ready, it just uncovered how much, well, I was just going to say the Italian word for it, BS, that I've been fed on risk management, risk mitigation, all that bullshit. And sorry, is that okay for your podcast if I use that word?
That's perfectly fine. That's real. It is.
So I'm going to streamline it because I want you to be doing the talking. But when I first met you, it was just like that. It was like George Costanza coming in, area of expertise on the resume. I'm like, he's been bullshitting his whole life. And I'm really sorry. I'm pretty hard on this. Is that if you don't know what you're talking about, don't know what it really spurred on when you gave the definition of a crisis. So why don't you share that? Because I know you started going through that, but you kind of stopped. You made it pretty simple. What's a crisis? What's a real crisis? Not a problem, a crisis.
Yeah. So one of the baseline foundational points that I bring to clients or I bring to the stage is defining crisis versus issue for your organization. And one thing I think before I give the definitions is This is a framework for you to apply to your organization or your industry and organization, because a crisis for one isn't necessarily a crisis for another. So really understanding the definition, the framework, and then applying that to you and how it does apply to you in terms of impact, scope, and scale of impact. So a crisis is, as a framework, is an event or situation. It doesn't have to be a negative event or situation. An event or situation that stops business as usual to some extent. It stops business as usual and requires immediate escalation straight to the top of leadership. So if leadership is in bed, in a meeting, on vacation, they are getting pulled out of bed, pulled out of that meeting, pulled out of that vacation, because this incident requires their strategic directive and their foresight, hopefully they have it, and their directives to the team. And that's because this incident threatens material impact on one to all of the following 5 things. So we have people, stakeholders, internal and or external, the environment, the business's operations, its reputation, and or its bottom line. So event that stops business as usual requires immediate escalation to leadership because it threatens material impact on people, environment, operations, reputation, or bottom line. Whereas an issue is usually a negative event in this case, that doesn't stop business as usual and doesn't require that escalation to leadership. So it is a negative event that is a challenge, that presents a challenge, but it's a part of whomever's role it is to manage it that isn't leadership, right? It's not pulling them out of their bed or their vacation. It's a part of their job description. It's an unpleasant part of their job description, but it's a part of their job description nonetheless. And that's because it doesn't threaten material impact on people, the environment, operations, reputation, bottom line. And oftentimes, an issue feels like a crisis when you're in it. And understanding the context and the threshold, this is a challenging exercise that I take our coaching program. So the Crisis Ready Institute now has these Crisis Ready coaching programs, which are 6-month programs that take you and your team through developing your crisis ready culture. And we spend 3 weeks on defining issue and crisis, identifying high risk scenarios, and defining thresholds. So where does that material impact? What's the threshold of the material impact that if this incident triggers that, now we're looking at a crisis level incident? And the exercise of going through that, of identifying that, of understanding that, of training, empowering your team to be able to associate with that, relieves so much stress when you're dealing with regular business activity and issue management, which is a function of regular business activity, as you know very well, Bruno. But the stress that you can alleviate your team of by having those thresholds and then having process involved or developed around when those thresholds get triggered, what do we do? How do we make sure we come out of this with increased trust and credibility? As well as how do we take that, scale it down, and in those business functions where we're dealing with issues all the time, how do we make sure that our teams are empowered and skilled and trained to come out of those with increased trust and credibility, building upon their skill level, their capacity, and strengthening brand equity every single day?
Well, you know what? That's pretty much all the time we have for this episode today. Thank you for tuning in with us. And you know what? Make sure you subscribe to our MegaPixx media channel so you will never miss an episode. And also, you can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram. We have content almost every day. So thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you guys soon.